kidding me?
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We have to talk about what just happened because this was one of the wildest, most frustrating games of the Indiana Fever season. I genuinely don't know whether to call it a collapse, a missed opportunity, or simply a game that completely slipped away in the biggest moments. Whatever you want to call it, one thing is certain. The Fever had this game in their hands and they let it get away. Let's start with one of the biggest talking points late in regulation. Watch that play again. Caitlin Clark drives toward the basket, there's contact, and everyone is asking the same question. Was that simply good defense, or should a foul have been called? Then, on another possession, A'ja Wilson makes contact with Caitlin Clark, and many Fever fans immediately argued it should have been ruled an offensive foul. From one angle, it certainly looks like a shove. A lot of fans believe you simply cannot make that kind of contact without expecting a whistle. Others see it differently. Regardless of where you stand, those were huge moments that completely changed the momentum of the game. Now, let's be honest, the officiating may have been controversial, but the referees are not the main reason Indiana lost this basketball game. The Fever had multiple opportunities to finish it themselves. Caitlin Clark had opportunities, Kelsey Mitchell had opportunities, the entire team had opportunities, and unfortunately, they couldn't capitalize. The biggest moment everyone is going to remember is the missed free throws late in regulation. Those were enormous. We're talking about opportunities that could have completely changed the outcome of the game. If just one of those free throws falls, we're probably having a completely different conversation today. Instead, the door stayed open, the Las Vegas Aces walked right through it. That's what makes this loss so painful. It wasn't like Indiana was completely outplayed for 40-plus minutes. Quite the opposite. They controlled large stretches of this game and even built a massive 20-point advantage. Think about that for a second. A 20-point advantage against the defending champions, against A'ja Wilson, against Chelsea Gray, against one of the most experienced teams in the WNBA. Those are games championship-level teams have to finish. Instead, Indiana allowed Las Vegas to slowly chip away at the lead until suddenly every possession became pressure-packed. That's where experience starts to matter. Chelsea Gray reminded everyone why she's one of the smartest guards in basketball. She wasn't spectacular throughout the entire game, but when winning time arrived, she delivered exactly what great veterans do. She made huge shots, she controlled the pace, she never seemed rushed. Those clutch baskets completely shifted the pressure onto Indiana. On the other side, the Fever suddenly looked hesitant. Instead of putting the game away, they started missing opportunities. Caitlin Clark had some brilliant stretches throughout the contest. She knocked down difficult shots, she created offense, she competed defensively, she played with tremendous effort. But late in the game, things became much more complicated. One question many fans continue asking is why Caitlin ended up isolated against A'ja Wilson during one of the biggest possessions of the night. Why wasn't there more movement? Why wasn't Aliyah Boston setting a screen? Why wasn't someone trying to force a switch onto another defender? Instead, Caitlin found herself trying to create against one of the elite defensive players in the league. That's an incredibly difficult assignment for any guard. Some people will criticize Caitlin for attacking that matchup. Others will criticize the coaching staff for allowing it to happen in the first place. Personally, I think responsibility belongs to everyone. Players have to execute, coaches have to put players in better positions. Late-game basketball is all about creating advantages, and Indiana simply didn't do that consistently. Another surprising statistic from this game was Caitlin finishing with 0 assists in over 30 minutes of action. That's almost unheard of for one of the best playmakers in basketball. Normally, she's creating easy opportunities for teammates all night long. This time, Las Vegas did an outstanding job taking away passing lanes and forcing Indiana into difficult offensive possessions. Still, despite that unusual stat line, Caitlin nearly carried this team back when the game became chaotic in the fourth. She made aggressive plays, she attacked the rim, she defended with energy, she created transition opportunities. For a moment, it looked like she might completely take over the game. That's why the ending feels so frustrating. There were so many positive moments that are now being overshadowed by what happened during the final possessions. Kelsey Mitchell also deserves attention. This was another difficult outing for her offensively. When you're playing meaningful minutes on a playoff-caliber team, every possession matters. Indiana needs contributions from everyone on the floor. When role players struggle offensively, it places even more pressure on stars like Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aliyah Boston to carry the entire load. That's exactly what seemed to happen during this game. The Fever had chances, multiple chances, golden opportunities to finish one of the biggest wins of their season. Instead, they watched the Aces keep believing until the very end. And once a veteran team like Las Vegas believes it still has a chance, they're one of the toughest teams in basketball to put away. Now we move into overtime, and this is where everything completely unraveled for Indiana. The Fever had already watched a 20-point lead disappear, but even then, they still had opportunities to leave with a victory. That's what makes this loss so frustrating. Even after everything that happened in regulation, Indiana still had multiple possessions to win the game. Instead, the final 5 minutes became a lesson in execution. Chelsea Gray deserves tremendous credit. For most of the night, she wasn't dominating the box score or taking over offensively, but championship players don't always have to control every quarter. Sometimes they simply wait for the biggest moments, and that's exactly what Chelsea Gray did. When the Aces needed someone to settle the offense, she answered. When they needed a clutch basket, she answered. When they needed someone to stay composed under pressure, she answered again. That's what veteran leadership looks like. Wilson also reminded everyone why she's one of the best players in the world. She didn't have her cleanest offensive game early, but elite players adjust. As the game progressed, she became more aggressive, attacked the paint, got to the free throw line, and made winning plays when Las Vegas needed them most. Indiana, meanwhile, continued leaving the door open. One possession summed up the entire night. Caitlin Clark made an outstanding behind-the-back pass that created a great scoring opportunity. Those are the kinds of plays that only a handful of players in basketball can make consistently. The pass was there, the opportunity was there. Unfortunately, Indiana couldn't convert. Moments like that become even more painful after a loss because fans naturally replay them over and over, wondering how differently the game might have ended. The Fever also had defensive breakdowns that proved costly. There were loose balls that weren't secured. There were rebounds that escaped their hands. There were defensive rotations that came just a second too late. Against a veteran team like Las Vegas, those small mistakes become huge mistakes. Another talking point coming out of this game is the officiating. Many Fever fans believe Caitlin Clark absorbed contact from A'ja Wilson that should have resulted in an offensive foul or another whistle late in the game. Others argue Caitlin was fouled while battling for the loose ball. Those discussions will continue for days. But at the same time, Indiana knows there were enough opportunities before those calls ever became a factor. Championship teams usually try to avoid putting themselves in a position where one whistle decides everything. That's exactly what the Fever will need to learn moving forward. Despite the disappointing finish, there were still positive signs. Caitlin Clark competed throughout the night. She defended aggressively. She fought through contact. She continued attacking despite the pressure. Those are qualities you want from your franchise player. At the same time, she'll probably be the first person to admit she wishes she could have had those late free throws back. Those moments are difficult because they tend to define public perception. If those free throws go in, people are probably talking about another clutch Caitlin Clark performance. They're talking about Indiana defeating one of the league's best teams. They're talking about another signature win. Instead, the conversation becomes centered on missed opportunities. That's how quickly narratives change in professional sports. The MVP discussion is another interesting angle. Before this game, many fans believed Caitlin Clark had firmly entered the conversation alongside players like A'ja Wilson. One difficult ending doesn't erase everything she's accomplished this season. However, high-profile games often carry extra weight in award discussions. Fair or unfair, those late moments stick in voters' minds. That's why games like this feel even bigger than just one regular season loss. Now the focus immediately shifts to Chicago. That matchup suddenly becomes enormous. The Fever cannot afford to let one heartbreaking defeat turn into a losing streak. Good teams respond. Good teams learn. Good teams use painful losses as motivation instead of allowing them to damage confidence. That's exactly what the Indiana has to do. They'll need better late-game execution. They'll need cleaner offensive possessions. They'll need stronger communication defensively. Most importantly, they'll need to finish games they've already put themselves in a position to win. Because make no mistake, the Fever were capable of winning this game. They had the talent, they had the momentum, they had the lead. They simply couldn't finish. Kelsey Mitchell once again showed why she's one of the league's most consistent scorers. Her offensive production remains incredibly valuable, even if this wasn't the type of performance people will remember most. Aliyah Boston continued battling inside all night, giving Indiana toughness on both ends of the floor. Sophie Cunningham brought energy whenever she stepped onto the court. Lexie Hull will undoubtedly look to bounce back after a difficult outing, because every player has games they'd rather forget. As for Stephanie White, she'll certainly review every late-game possession. Coaches understand that end-of-game execution often determines whether a season is remembered for success or missed opportunities. In the end, this game wasn't decided by one single play. It wasn't decided by one missed shot. It wasn't decided by one whistle. It was a combination of missed free throws, defensive breakdowns, clutch shot-making by Las Vegas, and missed opportunities during the biggest possessions of the night. That's what makes this loss hurt so much. The good news for Indiana is that the season isn't over. There are still important games ahead. There are still opportunities to respond. There are still chances to strengthen their playoff position and prove they can close out elite opponents. The next game becomes one of the biggest tests of their season. Can they move on from this heartbreaking defeat? Can Caitlin Clark respond with another big performance? Can Kelsey Mitchell continue her scoring consistency? Can Aliyah Boston anchor the defense? Can Stephanie White make the adjustments needed in late-game situations? We'll find out soon enough. One thing is certain, this loss will be remembered as a game that slipped away after Indiana held complete control. Whether it becomes a turning point or just a painful lesson depends entirely on how the Fever respond in the games ahead. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did the referees influence the outcome? Should the Fever have executed better down the stretch? And what do you think Indiana has to improve before facing Chicago? If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest WNBA coverage. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.